Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 27th of April, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll look at the state legislatures to shut down funding for Planned Parenthood and find out the latest in the race to finish Gabby Giffords' congressional term. Plus, we'll check out the impact of Latino politics on this year's U.S. Senate race. Joining me this evening is Arizona Public Media reporter Christopher Conover, Tucson Tea Party organizer Trent Humphreys, and Pima County Democratic Party Chairman Jeff Rogers. Welcome to everybody. Christopher, a big week at the U.S. Supreme Court for SB 1070. The justices finally heard this case about the constitutionality of Arizona's controversial immigration law.
Exactly. This is what everyone's been waiting for. Now, of course, we don't have a ruling. That won't come till later this summer. At issue really was the federal preemption. On the street, we hear a lot of talk about racial profiling. That wasn't brought up. The federal preemption over this was really the constitutional issue that was argued in the court.
And Jeff, you're an attorney. How did you think this court case went?
Well, they can't look at the racial profiling issue because that is what we call an as applied, where they have to wait until the law takes effect and then see how it works. So that is coming should most of this be upheld. I think that many of us were disappointed to see that on at least two of the areas of concern of the four that were that the court stayed, that it looks like there's going to be a majority of the Supreme Court to uphold them, and that will be the ones that allow them to stop and detain people who they have a reasonable basis to believe are here illegally, and then the second one is to arrest people that they believe have committed a deportable crime. It looks like there's going to be a majority for that, especially with one justice who couldn't vote, Elena Kagan, because of participating in some of these cases in the lower court. So it looks like the other two probably will be upheld, the Ninth Circuit's ruling, and those are the two that makes it a crime to be in the state illegally, and the other one makes it a crime to both be here illegally and to work is the second one. So those two look like they're probably going to get upheld, or at least the Ninth Circuit's decision staying them will be upheld. But the other two looks like that I'm disappointed to say that the Supreme Court is pretty much ignoring an awful lot of history and an awful lot of its own rulings, and it looks like the Ninth Circuit opinion's in trouble on that one.
Trent, what did you think of how this went?
I don't even think it's going to be close. If you watch the hearings, even Justice Sotomayor was telling the administration lawyer, "You're not helping your case any," with the arguments that he was making. I think they went in with a poor case. I think that their argument doesn't make sense. I don't even think it's going to be close. There's been a lot of 9-0 decisions against the administration these past few months. I think you're going to get another lopsided decision.
So you think it will be completely held up or split, as Jeff suggested?
I think it'll probably be split, I think. But I think in those particular things that he's referring to, I think it's going to be lopsided in favor of the Arizona law.
And how about the politics of SB 1070? You know, we know that when it passed, it certainly helped Governor Jan Brewer win the governor's race. She cleared out her primary opponents and then went on to a handy victory in November. The Arizona Legislature now is 2/3 Republican. Is this still a winner for the GOP?
Well, it depends on if you believe polling or not. The polling numbers even says 50% nationally, 50% of Democrats are on board with this decision. In fact, if you even look at Hispanics, the latest Q poll that came out said that 49% of Hispanics don't like SB 1070. However, 47% of Hispanics are on board, and that's a national poll. That's where you can actually look at the way they've done the poll. It's not somebody coming out of a different think tank or something. That was a nationally well-financed poll. And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody knows. I think there's a lot of people that think they know. A lot of people out there trying to manufacture outrage on both sides, but it remains to be seen what the ultimate effect would that be on that. I think the Republicans would be very comfortable going in and having that battle, at least at this election cycle.
Jeff, what do you think as far as the politics of this go? You know, we've heard a lot of talk. The Latino voters are a sleeping giant. They haven't voted at their rate in the population in previous elections, but this could be the thing that finally awakens them. Do you think
I think you could be right, Jim. The Latino population has grown by 600,000 in the last decade just in Arizona. They are indeed a sleeping giant, and we have plans this cycle to register and get on the permanent an early voter list as much of the Latino population as we can. We had some success with that 2 years ago, and I frankly think that's what saved Grijalva and Giffords seats. Was the plan that we implemented 2 years ago, and I think we're going to try to double down on that plan. I do think this is something that's going to upset Latino voters a great deal. And for instance, we saw a poll that came out today that says that 75% of the people in Arizona completely approve of the DREAM Act. And I don't mean the pseudo-DREAM Act that the Republicans are coming up with through Marco Rubio. I mean the real DREAM Act that allows kids who came here through no fault of their own and get a college education or join the military to get on a path to citizenship. And I think that those kinds of things are going to hurt Romney a lot. I mean, he was probably the staunchest of immigration foes of all of the Republican candidates and had the most extreme views on all of these. He even said he would veto the DREAM Act if it came before him. So I think that it's going to hurt the Republicans a great deal. It might be what we need to go over the top here in Arizona for the Democrats and to get Carmona and Obama to win this state.
What about the Latino vote and the Republicans? We have certainly seen polls that show that Barack Obama has a commanding lead over Mitt Romney, and we've seen even Romney saying, we have to find some way to get the Latino vote moving back in the Republican direction.
Well, I think it all comes down to the way you face it. I mean, the way that Mr. Rogers here phrased about the DREAM Act, that would be pretty popular. People serve in the military, they've been here forever. That doesn't encompass all that the DREAM Act has. I mean, the Republicans have their version, which is probably closer to what he's talking about. It doesn't have a lot of other provisions that people may not like if it was revealed to them. I think that the immigration bill, I mean, what we've seen is that, there's still this impression that before long that the entire country is going to be majority Latino. However, the latest demographic studies that come out by Pew, among other places, show that a lot of that might be overblown. There's just not enough population in Mexico like there was 20 years ago to continue the trends that we've been seeing as far as immigration goes, legal and otherwise. So it'd be interesting to see, if you're going to bet all the marbles on a particular strategy, I think that you should be able to know all the facts about it. And I think that what we'll see is that a lot of the assumptions that we've made now will end up being like assumptions made 20 years ago and be completely wrong.
Well, it's not just the Hispanic vote. I mean, in the latest polls that came out within the last 2 weeks, Obama is beating Romney 43-27 amongst independents. So if the undecideds that are still out there break in that manner, as well as we have a large Hispanic turnout, I think the Democrats have a really good shot of winning Arizona.
I hope the Democrats spend a lot of money in Arizona.
And one other thing you have to realize is that John Boehner's already said that the Rubio so-called DREAM Act is already dead, and it did not include anything about people who are getting a higher education. It only included military service, and it did not include a path to citizenship. It created a sort of an apartheid second-class citizenship for people who would be in that program. So, it really wasn't anything to brag about, and yet still Boehner says it's dead on arrival.
And we did see some polls this week in Arizona that did show a close presidential race, Christopher.
Exactly. Behavioral Research Center, the first one, had Obama leading Romney 42-40. Then ASU had one the exact opposite, Romney leading Obama 42-40. So those are obviously both very close, both within the margin of error.
And Trent, you just expressed a lot of skepticism about
a lot of undecideds in that poll, for one. And I don't buy it. Like I say, Arizona's a +7 as far as Republican goes as voting trends. That would mean that Obama's overperforming by 9 points, which he's not doing anywhere else in the country right now.
And the First Lady is coming to Tucson next week. We've had other visits from Joe Biden. We had Mitt Romney. It does seem like the presidential candidates or their surrogates are certainly paying some attention to Arizona at this point. But do you feel as though there's actual reason to believe that the Democrats have a shot here?
I think that those are two indicators that we do have a shot. Jim Messina, the campaign manager for Obama, has said that a final decision will be made within the next 60 days about whether to put resources here. We've also already seen them open up a fifth office in Glendale, and we have a vibrant operation operating out of our headquarters that's from the Obama for America campaign. So I'm looking forward to them joining the fight here.
And Nate Silver, the polling guru at the New York Times, made the point today that Arizona probably, it's not inconceivable that Obama would win here, but that it wouldn't really be a swing state because if Obama's winning here, he's doing so well elsewhere that he doesn't need Arizona.
Well, I certainly hope that is the case, that he doesn't need Arizona. But I think even if he doesn't need Arizona, he's looking at that Senate campaign saying we could have a very closely divided Senate, and Carmona is somebody who uniquely appeals to independents, having been a lifelong independent. And this is a guy who can beat Flake and give us our first Democratic senator in 24 years.
And we did have some polling this week, Christopher, on that Carmona Flake race that was coming actually from the Carmona campaign that we should point out that did show a close race there.
Exactly. 43-39 with Flake leading, and this came, as you said, from the Carmona campaign. They were trumpeting it that it's closing, and that difference is within the margin of error on the poll. So Carmona is trumpeting that he's starting to close.
And we should point out that Jeff Flake is not yet the nominee. He does have a primary opponent, although I think he's the presumptive nominee at this point.
His opponent just dumped $4 million of his own money into that race. That's not over by a long shot.
So you think Flake could actually face a tough primary here?
I think anytime you start talking those amounts of money, yeah. I mean, that's not going to be something where he's going to slack for name recognition. And I do know that Mr. Cardin has been campaigning hard. I've seen him personally like 4 times in the past 2 months, and I don't attend a lot of Republican events, but I've seen the man. So he's working Southern Arizona and everywhere. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that Flake has a big edge, and I think if Flake settles down and runs the campaign he can, he'll probably win that race. But he's not going to coast to victory.
And what about a Carmona Flake matchup? Do you think that will end up being a close race there?
Possibly. I think it'll be close in Southern Arizona. But that's the thing, is that Carmona is so entrenched in the Obamacare thing, which is just, once people get how much he was involved in promoting that law and how much he was involved in making sure that went through, I think that that law, it's just poison in Arizona. Southern Arizona is bad. Imagine if you start taking it into Phoenix and places like that. That I think it'll hurt him pretty bad. I don't think a lot of people are aware of how much he was involved in that law.
And the Carmona campaign saying that he's going to be a candidate who appeals to independents.
I think so. Right now, I remember in this very close poll, it showed that he had only 22% name recognition statewide. So he hasn't even introduced himself to most of the people in the state. He has 44% name recognition here in Tucson, where I guarantee it won't be close. He'll win by a huge margin. I mean, he is practically a local hero. I mean, here's a guy who at one point was dangling out of a helicopter to save a man on a mountain ridge. This is a guy who's done amazing things with his life and came from a life of poverty to do it. So once he introduces himself across this state, I think you're going to see those numbers turn around completely the opposite way, and he's actually going to have a lead.
All right, and while we're talking about these federal races, we've got the one coming up much sooner, the bellwether race, Congressional District 8, and Obamacare was front and center in that campaign this week as Ron Barber, the Democrat in that race, came out and said that he wanted to see some reforms to Obamacare. Christopher.
Exactly. The Arizona Republican Party has sent out mailers all over the district, and one of the things they were getting on Ron about was being a rubber stamp for the president and Nancy Pelosi supporting the Affordable Care Act. And Ron came out this week with 4 points, if you will, a 4-point plan to change the Affordable Care Act. 2 of the big takeaways on that were allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices and then no cuts to Medicare.
And Trent, you see this as a sign that Barber campaign's on the defensive?
Oh, I mean, that's the last thing you expect him to see, is to come out and to run a backpedal on something that Gabrielle Giffords stood so hard for. I mean, it was amazing, actually. That means that his polling is showing something, that there's definitely weakness there, because that was basically his first time he ever came out and even talked policy this whole election cycle. So for him to come out on there, it just shows me that if that's such a loser issue that he has to run away from it in Southern Arizona, that over the entire state of Arizona, it has to be complete poison.
I'll tell you what's complete poison. The Kelly Healthcare statements this week that health care is a privilege that you must earn. Okay, that's kind of toxic. I mean, this guy doesn't only want to eliminate Medicare, turn it into a voucher program, but he also wants to do that to Social Security. What we've seen from Ron Barber is to say what everybody says. The Affordable Health Care Act is not perfect. It needs some fixes. And we see Republicans with no new ideas, that of anything that can fix it and make it better. Instead, they just want to throw it out and go back to the entire mess we had before that. The Republicans were the ones who defeated the plan to allow Medicare to engage in negotiations with pharmacy companies for lower prices like the Veterans Administration does. And yet Republicans kept us from inserting that into the original bill. So what Barber is saying as one of those four things, this is something that's necessary to control health care costs. He also wants to do something that is pretty much believed by both sides of the aisle, and that is these outcome-based incentives where you pay for the outcome. You're not paying for a service in particular, which then causes each individual service to skyrocket in price. So, he has several ideas, including also not allowing them to raise your premiums willy-nilly, to have some kind of clamp on insurance companies that they can't raise your rates completely at will. So these are the kind of things that are really optimistic fixes to make the Affordable Care Act better, and instead of scrapping it in favor of nothing.
2,700 pages, and we couldn't put good ideas in. I mean, that bill was just a complete monstrosity that nobody read and nobody knew it was in there. We're still finding surprises in that bill. I mean, and likely it's going to be found unconstitutional by what we've seen in the discovery in the court case. So that's going to be a complete mess. And the Republicans do have solid fixes in mind. It's just that Harry Reid won't let anything get through. That guy does nothing in the Senate. They haven't passed a budget in 4 years. I mean, he sits on everything. Talk about the party of no. What does Harry Reid done for this country in the last 4 years?
Well, he's done the best he can to defeat Republicans' constant filibustering of every good idea that comes through that Senate.
You had 60 senators. You had 60 senators. You did nothing to help America.
The Senate is entirely dysfunctional. And the first thing that needs to happen, no matter which party's in there, is they need to figure out a way to reform the filibuster rule, because America did not intend in its Constitution to give a right to a small minority of senators to stop every bit of legislation and to bring government to a standstill. And that's what we've seen. The Republicans are a do-nothing party. Their proudest aim and their proudest achievement in the last 3.5 years has been to stop things from going forward.
Harry Reid has had the gavel. He's not brought any proposals forward. He won't, because he's afraid he might lose votes.
Well, I want to bring this back to CD8, and we are starting to see the surrogates emerge in this. We've heard that both the National Republican Congressional Committee and the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, are starting to buy up airtime to start running some ads in this district.
This is what we've all been waiting for the national money to come in and really be shown. And the NRCC initially did about $150,000 buy in the district, and now it seems like they're going to jump that number up, possibly doubling, I've heard, to $300,000. And that comes after the DCCC announced that they were matching the $150,000 buy with a $150,000 buy of their own. So here comes the national money, the outside national money, into this race. And
this is a race that's kind of a bellwether for the upcoming election. Republicans,
and evidently, by the evidence we've seen with the different groups and campaigns make it, that polling must be really close. And we don't have any polling that's been released publicly, but the private polling must show that race is really close, just like the last one was.
And you expect even more surrogates to be coming into this race?
I do. I expect that, and this is the bad part of the race, really, because, if candidates run negative attack ads with their own, say, I approve this message at the end of it, you can hold them accountable. But when outside money from either side begins to be involved, then it just begins to be very muddy. And I am disappointed to see it happen on both sides, but we can't disarm unilaterally. If they're going to throw all this money at it, then the Democrats are going to have to do the same thing. And I think you'll see, I've already heard from some sources that the Republicans have committed to spending $500,000 in negative campaigns money against him. That does not even include the super PACs and independent committees that might emerge from your millionaires and billionaires who want to weigh in on this race. So I think because it's the only game in the nation right about this time in the middle of the summer, you're going to see a lot of money coming in here and a lot of negative ads.
All right, so we're going to be keeping our eye on that between now and Election Day, June 12th. Christopher, we're past the 100-day mark. Lawmakers seem eager to wrap up the session. They seem on the verge of a budget deal up there.
Yes, we actually talked to House Speaker Andy Tobin yesterday, and he told Arizona Public Media that, Yeah, they are pretty close in their negotiations with the governor's office, the majority legislative Republicans in the governor's office. One of the big holdups was the governor was out of town this week. She was in Washington for the 1070 hearings, but he was expecting come Monday, he wasn't looking for anything over the weekend to happen, even though everybody's there. Everybody's going to take the weekend off. But come Monday, negotiations will really get down to it. So in the next couple of days, we should see them work everything out. I'm not sure they'll have a budget come Monday, but later part of the week is what the House Speaker was indicating.
And we've also seen a number of bills getting through the legislature, although they're not sending them to the governor because she says she won't sign anything till this budget is done. But one of the key ones was a bill that would not allow Planned Parenthood to receive any federal funding that passes through the state for any kind of health care services it provides to women.
Exactly. That got through the legislature this week, waiting to go to the governor. But as you said, she's put a moratorium on signing anything until the budget gets worked out. So it's really up to her. And exactly where she'll fall on this is a bit of a mystery. So we're all just going to have to sit and wait until bills start coming back down from the ninth floor at this point.
And what do you think of this Planned Parenthood bill, Trent?
Well, here's the thing is that first we got to get the budget done before we worry about anything else. That budget should be top priority for the state because that's their primary duty. And I think that there'll be time to look at that issue. If there's other ways to use that money, because we're short. I know it's federal funds coming through, but there are other things we could use, for access in other areas that we're short on money for. And it seemed to me there are certain things that we're used to spending money on that have become a luxury in some other areas where where our primary focus as a government is not meeting. We don't have enough money to pay for those things first. I think we need to look at the budget in its entirety, and how those federal funds come in, where they can be used, and I'm not sure that we've done a complete study of that yet. And so,
well, this is $900 million in federal money that would be coming into the state and that is dispersed for family planning efforts and women's health care. And in Texas, they passed a version of this same bill, and they lost over $1 billion worth of federal funding because of the bill. We're not sure whether or not that effect is going to happen here, but it's certainly a possibility that we could lose $900 million in family planning funding because of this bill. So I hope the governor looks at that and decides to veto it and sort of put an end to this war on women's health that the Republicans have been waging for the last few months.
But it's also access funding as well, right? Low-income women can use, if they're covered under access, they can choose Planned Parenthood as a provider.
Being against Planned Parenthood does not necessarily mean you're against family planning. That's the thing, is that Planned Parenthood isn't the only person out there, or even in some cases the most effective person.
It's the major provider of family planning in Arizona right now.
And speaking of family planning, this contraception bill that has been talked about quite a bit on this program also passed this week.
It did. It passed through the Senate, and basically it expanded an exemption for religious organizations to allow companies or employers such as a religious bookstore to exempt coverage of family planning from their health care coverage unless it's needed for other medical reasons. And that also is awaiting a trip up to the ninth floor and a decision from the governor.
And Jeff, this one has gotten a lot of attention on this program and elsewhere.
It has. It now expanded to something called religious affiliated, and it didn't define what affiliated is. So there's no telling. God only knows how many people and employers will say, well, I have a religious affiliation, and therefore I want to cut you off from contraceptive care. And the other bad thing this bill does is it replaces a bill that was passed 10 years ago with bipartisan support without a question. And that bill barred any kind of discrimination or firing of people who used contraception. This bill would end that. And while it tries to say that it doesn't supplant other federal and state regulations, it does not have the language in there that would keep an employer from firing a woman who wanted to use contraceptives or a man who wanted to be snipped as well. I mean, it's it theoretically applies to both of them. So it's just a bad bill, and this Republican war on women's health care is going to come back to bite them in this general election this year. I guarantee that.
Do you think there could be some political backlash on some of this legislation?
Possibly, but again, we're talking about a birth control pill and $9 package of birth control. And I think that the people that have religious freedom, I think that far outweighs the $9. But there's other ways that this could be happening. I don't think that we have to come down. I know the Obama made this war thing, but look, the people that have religious exceptions for any number of reasons. This is America. We have freedom of religion here, and that should be respected.
All right, and Christopher, there's also a measure that would address sustainability in something called UN Agenda 21. Republican lawmakers who see this UN Agenda 21 as a threat to the state. What's this all about?
It basically would prohibit local municipalities from doing anything that deals with sustainability and use of tax dollars.
And Trent, have you been following this one?
Here's my thing: is that anytime you make a law to preemptively combat another law that somebody else might make, it always ends up a mess. My judgment of law is I look at the law and I imagine it enforced by Daniel Patterson. And if it's something I say, oh, that could go really wrong, we shouldn't pass that law.
Jeff?
Well, I usually imagine any Republican being in charge of the law and agree with you, basically. This is something being pushed by the John Birch Society, basically. This bill, in 1992, this was passed by the UN, and it was something signed as like a treaty by the first George Bush. So this is not some wacky left-wing idea. The Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Phoenix has come out strongly against this in the last 48 hours. They're going to every member saying this could actually endanger a situation where, say, a German company wants to come over here and build a solar plant to build solar panels. This thing deals with not only sustainability, but integrating women into the workforce. I mean, it's a platform of sort of 27 ideals that really can't be enforced by anybody. And so this is just kind of like many of the bills that they've thumbed their nose at the federal government. And it's just ridiculous. There are more important things this legislature should be doing.
This came to the U.S. Senate, and it was voted
about
down.
half a minute here.
Yeah, it was voted down completely. So look, the UN is just a non-entity. They don't do anything. They don't put anything out there. And so until it affects us personally, I don't think there's any danger of Arizona being singled out by the UN for danger. I think that we're going a little too far on that one.
So you're not looking at this as must-pass legislation?
No, I think we need to get that budget done. I think that's important.
Okay, and we should point out that the first George Bush was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Well, for those conspiracy theorists, maybe there's something to that.
All right, we gotta leave it right there. That is our show for tonight. Thank you guys for being here. You can keep up with all the latest political news by visiting azpm.org/yourvote. While you're on our website, we'd love to hear what you thought about tonight's program, so click on the item about this program and leave a comment. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at the latest budget maneuvers at the Arizona Legislature. On Monday, Arizona Illustrated talks with the Green Party candidate in the Congressional District 8 race. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.